Hello and welcome back for week 8 of our Health Dialogue series. This week we are discussing exercise and how you should change your diet when you start your exercise program. No doubt you will be starting that here shortly based off of all the overwhelming information we've given you on the benefits of why you should change certain aspects of how much you move your body and what you should put into it. I haven't introduced my lovely co-host yet, but over to the side of me, right or left, depending on if it's your screen or mine, is Miss Tammy Miller. She is an expert in biochemistry and nutrition. My name is Mandy Johnson, and I'm a physical therapist and an athletic trainer. And so we're coming to you with some background knowledge on different aspects of how the body works to give you some great knowledge going forward into this new year so that you can make great changes for you and for those around you. So it's this week, like I said, we're talking about the benefits of exercise, why you would actually want to do that, which I think most of us are pretty much aware of, and then how you might want to change your diet once you do make that change. So the big thing with starting an exercise program, which we go over a little bit, so if you're good with going back and re-listening to our goal setting just dialogue that we had our first week and the second week, those have some really key components of how you need to set those life-changing goals up for success. But normally when people are starting exercise, they really bite off a huge chunk, like, I'm going to run a marathon, and they've never run before. Or maybe they want to run a marathon in 3 months, and they haven't run since high school, and they're 35. And so the real big thing with starting your exercise program and making sure you can succeed with it is being reasonable about the exercise goal that you set. So goals are great. Goals help you to really reach for the stars. You want to have what we call those stretch goals and then the smarter goals. So the stretch goal could still be running a marathon. It could be running an ultra and doing like the 100-mile Leadville run at over, I think, 14,000 feet in Leadville, Colorado, which is just insane in my opinion. I would never even dream of doing such a thing. But maybe that's your long-term stretch goal. Where you set those short-term goals, those smarter goals, is really going to be based off of where you are today. And so that's the main problem that I see for most people, is that they set a stretch goal to happen next month, or they set that stretch, like that big picture goal, to happen in a relatively short amount of time. So you're really setting yourself up for failure. This is why so many people stop making New Year's resolutions, because they just constantly are faced with that failure. And life doesn't have to be like that. And your exercise program, or starting an exercise program, doesn't need to be like that. So just make sure as you start that exercise program, and it could be CrossFit, it could be running, it could be going to bar class, it could be maybe starting Zumba a few times a week, whatever that is. And I'll talk about, finding the right exercise program for you in the next episode. But really just make sure that you approach that with something that's realistic based off of what you've got going on in your life. If you have a newborn and a 5-year-old, doing all your exercises at night is probably not reasonable, because you've got a lot on your plate at nighttime. Maybe you need to look at pushing that during nap time, or maybe you want to veer those more towards you're going to do more on the weekends when your husband's around, or you can get someone else to help you with childcare. So just very, very, very much be realistic about what you can really do to push yourself towards that big stretch goal, because you need those stretch goals. So that's the big thing when you're starting that exercise. And I know for sure a lot of the changes you want to see from that exercise are going to relate back to what Tammy has to say on how you would change what you're eating as you start up that exercise program.
Absolutely.
So,
and
what are those big things that you would really, you normally tell people, Tammy?
So first thing is, back in the second week, we put out some nutrition basics. And I want to start there because basically what we need to do is we need to make sure that of the calories that we eat daily, that 45 to 65% of them are carbohydrates. And carbohydrates means fruits, vegetables, good carbohydrates. 20 to 35% should be fat, and 10 to 35% should be protein. So that is generally what we should be eating just to make our bodies happy. And as Mandy was saying, you've got your stretch goal and then you've got your short-term goals, and what you eat is going to change a little bit with the short-term goals and the stretch goal, because the short-term goals, you're going to start off with, potentially being sedentary and doing just a little bit at a time, what we would call recreational, an hour a week. And when you do an hour a week, you need to be shooting for somewhere up between 1.3 and like 2.3 grams per pound. And by per pound, I mean your body weight. So this is going to be different for everybody. So you have to know your body weight and you have to do a little bit of math, but thank goodness for calculators. So somewhere between 1.3 and 2.
Wikipedia that like put in like body weight and gram, and there's all kinds of calculators out there. So
Absolutely.
Look that up.
Absolutely. And use that to your advantage, because we have the technology. And when your child asks, is there an app for that? The answer is yeah, there is an app for that. So, looking at, 1.3 to 2.3 grams of carbohydrates per pound of body weight if you're recreational. Okay. Mm-hmm. And your protein is going to be between 0.3 to 0.36 to 0.45 grams per pound. And as you change and as you get more active, those numbers are going to change a little bit. Obviously, carbohydrates are necessary to make the energy our body needs. If I want to go from recreational to team sports, maybe that's playing on a softball team or playing a volleyball league or playing on a rugby team, whatever that happens to be, those team sports, you're going to need more energy because it's more often and it's for a longer period of time. So when you're looking at those team sports, that's going to go up to about 2.3 to 4.5 grams per pound of carbohydrates. And in reality, your protein will go up a little bit, 0.6 to 0.77 grams per pound. So that'll go up a little bit, not too much. And then our endurance sports, those are going to be higher because here's your marathon. Here's your ultra marathon. Here is that I'm going to run 100 miles in Leadville. Okay, great. If you've got that endurance, that elite, then yes, you're going to need more carbohydrates because your muscles are going to store. You can actually over, training 4 to 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, you are going to increase the amount of glucose that you can store in your muscles, which is wonderful. Love that.
Right.
And so we can increase that to 4.5 to 5.5 grams per pound. And then believe it or not, your protein doesn't go up as much with endurance sports. It's going to be between 0.5 and 0.9 protein. It's more about storing for those endurance athletes that glycogen, storing that extra energy in the muscles so that we can get around. Okay. So one thing that I do want to point out is a lot of people who do weightlifting, who do endurance sports, who do team sports, yes, you need more protein, but a lot of people think they need a lot more protein. And one of the things that we're seeing dietarily is a huge reduction in carbohydrates, which is your energy, and a huge increase in protein. And what we're finding is when we break down, and we know this biochemically, when we break down protein, we make ammonia. Ammonia is toxic to our bodies. So our livers try and help us make it into urea, which is less toxic. Still not good for your body. Buildup is still not wonderful.
Right.
And so we're taxing the liver by eating too much protein. And we're seeing this a lot with protein powders, protein bars, things like that. And or increasing and saying, hey, I did this today, so I get a 20-ounce steak. Not only is it taxing your liver, but the ammonia and the urea have to be gotten rid of somehow. And they're gotten rid of through your urine. So you're now overextending your kidney, trying to get your kidney to get rid of that excess ammonia and urea that is building up in your body, that your liver is trying to detox a little bit by making it urea. And so we're seeing, unfortunately, a lot of people eating more protein than necessary, which is huge. And we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks for, a couple of the really common diets that we see among athletes that is increasing protein to the point where you're actually potentially damaging both your liver and your kidney because you're taxing it too much. So there is, and look back at what was posted on Wednesday, there's some great charts in there for what you should be eating, what you should be aiming for, and knowing how you exercise. And there's sedentary in there. There's also recreational, okay, up to the ultra endurance. I bow down to you that you are running and doing all of that for a whole time.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff for us to be thinking about what we need to change. And it's not huge changes if you think about it. It's just small changes to add a little bit extra carbohydrate to store in the muscles, or a little bit extra protein to build new muscles that you're making as you're exercising. It's just a little bit. It's not as much as people think.
Right. Which tends to be the case.
Yes.
A little bit is good. A lot more is better, right? No.
Yeah. It's almost like we've been talking about doing things in moderation a couple of times.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Sounds great.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, yeah.